You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.
There's a team that's in our hearts. We've got love that won't depart. We are always in the stands, 'cause we're super Dolphin fans. Football is mighty rough. Winning gets awful tough. We're rooting for the Dolphins. Our mighty, mighty Dolphins. We're rooting for the Dolphins. Our mighty, mighty Dolphins.
So it's just the two of us now.
Just the two of us.
Just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Just the two of us. You and I. The diehards that have stayed to the end got to hear me sing on the podcast tonight, baby. Brain,
Yes.
what do you think?
I think that the under, as much as it was looking really great, there's a, if the Dolphins don't play run defense, it could be
Oh,
lost.
no. Oh, poor fish pilot. Well, that'll take it down to the 2-minute warning. I mean,
And
I
then
don't
they
think they're going to
should
try
take-
to
I think
score,
they'll
right?
take
They're
a
not going
knee.
to kick a field goal. They'll run this
they'll
down to
take a
the
knee.
2-minute warning and then take knees, right? They're not
Well,
going to actually kick it.
Two knees aren't going to end it.
I know, but they're not actually going to try to score here, are they?
They might. Because two knees aren't going to end it. And I don't even know if, and the third knee would just, they could still do it. And then Miami would have the ball with a few seconds left.
I appreciate Nick in the comments giving us a little Mandich shout out.
And I would also follow up with another Mandich quote, which is, football is a tough game. And it's even tougher when you're dumb. And for the second week, Mike McDaniel has shown that as a head coach and preparing his team, he's had a dumb strategy, a dumb game plan. And I think it's, at this point, you've had 2 weeks now, and you've seen it with different quarterbacks. I don't think it's going to matter. I don't think it matters who you play. I think this is who they are. When Tua's not in, I fully expect this to be more of the same next week. You'll have the bye week, and it'll probably be more of the same that week. And I fully expect this team to be 1-5.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't see how there's any chance that that's not going to be what happens. It's the same old thing every time. It's like Mike McDaniel has proven to us. I mean, it's done. It's done. There's not a question about it anymore. This man is incapable of just saying, this is what we have. We've got to be straightforward. We've got to do something. We've got to take a look at the talent that we have and figure out how we utilize it. He can't do it.
Well, I'm not a believer that anybody is incapable of change.
It's not happening.
Well, it hasn't happened yet. That's for damn sure. He should certainly be criticized.
I mean,
At
here's
this
the
point,
thing.
I wouldn't have any faith that he's going to change, but I wouldn't say that it's like impossible.
It has been. This is the third season that Mike McDaniel has been the head coach of this team. A good chunk of the first season, he was dealing with backup quarterbacks, and he couldn't figure it out. And now we're in year 3, and it's the same thing. This is not a head coach who is capable of pivoting. This is not a head coach that is capable of trying to figure out another way. And the thing is, and as I have said many times, this is a head coach who wants to praise his players for being multiple and for being able to do different things and to be able to play in different ways. And at the end of the day, this is a head coach who is completely, at this point, based on the body of evidence that has been presented, this is the head coach who is completely either incapable or unwilling to pivot and do something else. And as a result, you've got a football team that without the quarterback that the offense was built around is completely, there's no other way to say it. They're dead in the water. As Mike has said from the very beginning, this is a team that is not going to win a game without their starting quarterback. And at this point, I have not seen anything that could possibly lead me to believe that this team will win another game if Tua Tagovailoa is not the quarterback. Because while you have other football teams and other organizations that are able to say, okay, our quarterback is out, our starting quarterback is out, we have to find another way to win, they have figured out how to do it. This team has been completely unable to do that. It is complete ineptitude. And again, I'm going to say it. It's not just the head coach. It's Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill's losing his shit on the sideline right now. But you know what? Tyreek Hill couldn't catch a backward pass at the beginning of the game. And because of that, he dropped that backwards pass and Tennessee picked up the ball in an opportunity where the Dolphins were moving the ball and looked like they might take advantage. And they haven't been able to do it. This has been a complete disaster class in every way, shape, and form, from at every level for everybody on this team. There is a certain degree of responsibility that falls on the head coach, but there is a certain degree of responsibility that falls on the players, particularly the players like Tyreek Hill who are making the money that they are making. You have a responsibility, buddy, and you can't catch a backwards screen pass. That guy has dropped way too many passes for a man that is being paid the way that he is being paid. Oh my God, poor Fish Pilot just lost his bet on the last play. Oh, Fish Pilot. Oh my God. The Dolphins give up a touchdown at the end. Fish Pilot loses his bet. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. What a horrible beat. What a horrible beat. On fourth down, they could have taken a knee up by 2 possessions. Oh, he said, oh man, Fish Pilot. Oh, I'm sorry, bud. That's brutal. That is brutal. The most brutal in every way. I mean, there's nothing else to say at this point, Brain. This team is Mike McDaniel is a disgrace. The team is a disgrace. It's from the top down. It's from the top down. Everything about it is a disgrace. And here's what I can tell you. If you are one of those people who is out there holding out hope that Tua Tagovailoa is going to come back in week 8 when this team is likely 1-6 by that point, and that Tua Tagovailoa is going to come back and lead this team on a miraculous turnaround, I don't know what to tell you. If that's what you believe, I'm sorry for you, because that's not going to happen. The odds of Tua Tagovailoa coming back in week 8 and this team being 1-6 and then taking this team and finishing like what they're going to need to do is basically they'll be 1-6. So with 10 games left, they're going to essentially have to go 10-0 or 9-1, at worst 8-2. Given that that's the hardest part of their schedule, I don't see it. It's not going to happen. This season, for all intents and purposes for the Miami Dolphins, is over. I don't care how optimistic you are. You cannot look at what we have seen from this team. And again, I remind you that this team has played 1 quarter of good football through 4 weeks. I have talked repeatedly about this team being the way that we have talked about this team for so long. And on this show, we talk about small sample sizes and not reacting to small sample sizes. 4 weeks in, you have begun to have an understanding what your football team is. And with your starting quarterback has been out for over half of that time. and you have not been able to adjust. You have not been able to do anything. And as a result, your team is now 1-3. In all likelihood, they're going to lose to the Patriots. They're going to lose to the Colts because these are teams that, like, you can say what you want about Jacoby Brissett not being a great starter, but you know what? Jacoby Brissett is in a team and in an organization that seems to at least have an idea of what they want to do. And the Miami Dolphins are completely clueless, completely inept, and completely without a clue. And as they have now lost 31-12 and fallen to 1-3, this team is an absolute disaster. And it goes all the way to the top. You're going to have people blaming Mike McDaniel, as they should. You're going to have people blaming Chris Greer, as they should. But you know who else you need to blame? You need to blame Steve Ross. It all starts with him. He's been loyal to a fault to Chris Greer. It all comes back to the fact that this team has no clear vision. The organization has no clear vision of what it wants to be. And you're going to have other people who are going to talk to you over the course of this week about the process and about the steps and the micro, looking at things from a micro level about how are the Dolphins going to get better and how are they going to improve and where is the margins, where are the areas where this team can get better. And the fact of the matter is, until Steve Ross sells the team to somebody else who can then hire somebody who can have a vision for what he wants the organization to be, or she, what they want the organization to be, until they can hire somebody with that kind of vision, that kind of upper top tier vision that can then be implemented from the top down. Once that happens, then you will have an organization that can turn a corner and be led to success. Until then, you have a team that is treading water and is simply just trying to exist. And at this point, that is all the Miami Dolphins are. I cannot for a second believe that this team is going to be capable of turning a corner at some point in this season and becoming a legitimate competitive football team. It's just not in the cards, and it's not in the cards because from the top down, they are a disaster.
Yeah, I think it's well said. I think it can be boiled down to the simple fact that the team was built wrong. And yes, you can.
You're right. It was built wrong.
You can blame Ross for, having the wrong guy build it. You can blame the guy that built it. It doesn't matter who you want to blame. The thing is that one guy's the owner and one guy is hired by the owner. So it's a lot easier to fire the guy that built it. And the truth is that you're going to have to, I don't think that you need to tear it down to the studs at this point, but you have to understand where the deficiencies are and you have to have a clear vision of how to fix it. I don't think it can be much clearer how to fix this. I think we have decades of NFL football, and it doesn't matter what era it is. In every era, football has been proven that the way that you win at this level is in the trenches and with a great quarterback. And until the Dolphins can do those two things simultaneously, which, to be frank, they haven't done since the 70s. They have not been good in the trenches and at quarterback since the 70s. They, sort of in the beginning of Marino's career, they were strong in the trenches at the beginning of his career, but they couldn't figure out a way to win. And then by the end of his career, then they were strong in the trenches, but Marino was past his prime. Since then, they've had a lot of years where they've been strong in the trenches and had no quarterback play. And in this iteration of the Miami Dolphins, they have had solid quarterback play, but they've been atrocious in the trenches. And this is the result. And you can have as many skilled players as you want. If you can't block and you can't tackle, it doesn't matter. And if you don't have the quarterback to hide your deficiencies, it doesn't matter. So it's pretty clear, like, you can hang on to Tyreek Hill and you can hang on to Jalen Waddle. And I hope that Tua comes back and he's healthy. I just don't know how you bank on it. I don't know how you bank on it to keep him around. I would give very strong consideration to just letting this thing play out and just tanking the season and trading away anybody that you're not feeling like is going to be here long term, and just seeing what you can get as much as you can get. You've got a decision to make on David Long Jr. Maybe you can get a 3rd or 4th round pick for him. You got a decision to make on Javon Holland. Maybe you can get a 1st or 2nd round pick for him. You got a decision to make on Bradley Chubb. Maybe you get a 4th or 5th round pick for him. You know, you got a decision to make on Tua. Sit him the whole season. Let this season be the disaster that it is. Get the number 1 pick in the draft. If you like multiple quarterbacks, heck, you could trade and get multiple quarterbacks and still get the quarterback of the future. Or if you love a guy at number 1, you just take your guy. And you still have all of the draft capital that you'd have. And you still have some really good players that you can build around. And you have a very, very quick way of rebuilding this thing. The only way that you're going to fail at building this thing is if you do the Dolphin thing to do, which is to say, you know what? I like the roster that we have, and we're just going to stay in the win now, and we're going to bank on Tua being healthy, and we're going to go out and we're going to spend money on guys. We're not going to trade anybody that's dead weight. We're going to play the compensatory pick formula. And then, you know, lo and behold, you know, granted, we have some draft capital, but it's not the same draft capital. And then we're in a spot where we're in the same spot where we're battling for a wild card because we're not where Buffalo is, because we don't have that guy at quarterback. We don't have the team built in the trenches. Look at what Buffalo did. You could not find 2 more diametrically opposite teams than the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins. The Buffalo Bills had decisions to make at skill positions this offseason and decided that in spite of how successful and how talented Stephon Diggs is, they're going to let him go. They're going to let other running backs go. They're going to let the peripheral guys go, but they're going to stay strong in the trenches, and they're going to have their quarterback. And the Dolphins, on the other hand, decided, well, we know we suck in the trenches, but we're going to double down, we're going to triple down, and we're going to bring in more skill position guys. Look at the 2 teams. Could not be more diametrically opposite in how they are built, and you can't be more diametrically opposite in the results.
It's all there. And that's it. So as you look at this, I mean, and that's the thing, that's the glaring thing, is that we came in to this season, we came into this offseason going, you know, the Bills are taking a step back here. And while, you know, listen, I think there are a lot of people out there that weren't honest with you. Either they weren't honest with you or they were blinded by their aqua and orange colored glasses, who came into the season telling you that the Dolphins were better. And as I said at the beginning of the season, and I think Aaron has said something to this point as well, the Dolphins on paper are a worse team this year than they were last year. But with that said, we felt that the Bills were taking a step backwards as well. And that meant that there was a chance that while the Dolphins were taking a step backwards on paper, that ultimately they might still be able to move forward and might ultimately make progress. But the fact of the matter is, that is not what has happened. This has been a complete disaster. And while you will undoubtedly have people that tell you that if the Dolphins had their starting quarterback and he wasn't injured, that this team would still be competitive, I would say to that, well, the Dolphins played exactly one good quarter of football. He basically played most of 7 quarters of football, and only one of those quarters contained competent football, competitive football. And when you go all in and you sign and extend your quarterback who has a history of being injury prone, and I'm not going to fall on my sword. I'm not going to tell you that, it was a bad idea to sign him to a contract. I think given the circumstance, we've talked about this at length, given the circumstances that the Dolphins were looking at, it made perfect sense to sign Tua to the extension. But when you sign that quarterback to that extension, when you don't invest truly invest in a backup quarterback, and then truly have an ability to not only bring in a backup quarterback, because listen, we've said during this live broadcast today, we've talked about the idea that, Malik Willis and Joe Flacco and Andy Dalton. I'm not sure, based on what I've seen from Mike McDaniel, that even if the Dolphins brought in Joe Flacco or Andy Dalton, that the Dolphins would succeed even in that circumstance, because I think you'd still have Mike McDaniel trying to run his silly little offense with all of his moves and his motions and his this and his that and the other thing. And I don't know that those quarterbacks, even with their veteran savvy and their experience, would be able to succeed with the Dolphins, given all of that. And so, I don't know. I just think you look at this team, and the Dolphins made a gamble. And Brain, you've said something to this extent. The Miami Dolphins have said that they were going all in on the fact that they could win in a non-traditional way.
Right.
In a way that is different than how other teams have won in the NFL over the years, which is being strong in the trenches and or having an elite quarterback who could play and carry the team to victory. The Dolphins have made that gamble, and that gamble has failed spectacularly. And you look no further than the situation you're in right now, and you see that that is what it is, that the Dolphins are a day late and a buck short.
Just saw a stat flash on ESPN. In the last 20 seasons, only 4 teams in the NFL through their first 4 games have had 0 offensive plays with a lead. The Dolphins, and then 3 other teams. 2005 Houston Texans finished the season 2-14. The 2012 Kansas City Chiefs finished the season 2-14. The 2017 Cleveland Browns finished the season 0-16.
That's all you need to know. That's all you need to know. The Miami Dolphins have played 4 games of football and have not led for a second of game time. Not a single second of game time. There is nothing you can do other than look at your head coach and look at your GM, and I think look at your owner and go, these 3 people have failed us. And it's not just them. As I said before, the players have failed you as well. All of them have failed you. Everybody in this organization has failed you. And I don't mean to say that these players aren't out there giving their all, because these are NFL players. And, God knows they are being paid a lot of money. But man, are they putting their bodies on the line. And nobody wants to put their body on the line and end up looking like they're looking right now. And that's why Tyreek Hill is on the sideline having a meltdown. That's why he's spazzing out. That's why that looks like what it looks like. And so here we are. This team is a disaster. They're 1-3. And at this point, Brant, at the beginning of the season, we talked about our paths for how this season could go and the most likely outcomes, right? And I said the least likely outcome for me was the team winning 13 games. I still believe that is the least likely outcome for the team to win 13 or more games. But I said the second least likely outcome was this team winning 0-6 games. And now at this point, after 4 weeks, as this team sits at 1-3, I believe the most likely outcome is that this team ends up winning 6 or fewer games over the course of this season. And because it's the Dolphins, I feel like they will win 6 games and then not even end up with a high enough pick to get like the top pick in the draft, because that's what they do. But Brain, at this point, there's no other way to look at this than look at this season as, I mean, after 4 weeks, this season is on course, and the most likely trajectory is that this season is a complete and utter disaster.
Yeah, I mean, it's looking that way for sure. I mean, for sure. Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that if Tua comes back, that the deficiencies of this team are going to go away. I think if Tua comes back, this team can be competitive, and I think if he comes back when he comes, as soon as he comes back, depending on what the team's record is, they can make things interesting. But if they're 1-5, realistically, with what they'd have 11 games left. I mean, even if you went 8-3 in that stretch, you'd be looking at a 9-8 team that's probably not making the playoffs. And I don't even know that that's necessarily a good thing. I know there's value in it. There's value in, extending your season and getting the most out of it that you could possibly get and not just throwing in the towel. But in the grand scheme of things, if this team was to finish 9-8 at that point, when it's like so blatantly obvious that that's where they're at, and you still have the impending questions on Tua, and again, 9-8 at this point is extremely positive and optimistic. I don't know that I feel
if this
confident.
team finished the season 9-8 at this point, you'd be over the moon.
Well, yeah, but I don't even know that you would, because at the end of the day, you'd look at it and you go, okay, well, we finished at 9-8. We just barely missed the playoffs. You'll cope with the whole idea of, well, if Tua didn't get hurt and we didn't get off to such a terrible start, then we definitely would have been a playoff team. And then you're going to go out and you're going to make your improvements, and you're going to go into the next season thinking, all right, we're going to be the team that we were when Tua came back. But he's one hit away from, us revisiting this whole thing. And so I think if it's going the path that it looks like it's going, which is this team's going to be 1-5 pretty quickly, I just think, like, whether he comes back or not, you're probably moving on from him. I think you got to move on, because you have to build this offensive line. And if you're going to draft a quarterback, you're going to need the money to build the offensive line. You're going to need the other draft capital to build the offensive line. I just think you're going to have to make a decision to pivot. And you put it in the contract for a reason. So I think going long-term on this, they could still very much salvage what they have. The only way to not salvage what they have is if they are not honest with themselves about where they're at. If they try to quadruple down on, we can make this work without investing in the offensive line, without, investing in the trenches. Now, I mean, could you make the argument of, well, we could keep Tua, and then instead of drafting a quarterback, we can go out there and we can draft offensive line, and we can draft defensive line with all of our draft picks. But realistically, if you're drafting that high in the draft and you got to move on from other guys, you're still going to be a couple years away. I just think you just move on. You just move on. You take the quarterback. You tank this season, You have clearly defined areas that you can address outside of quarterback. And now you don't have the boon of having, $40-50 million in cap space being used on a quarterback. And you could go back into the win now mindset of, I want to win with a rookie quarterback. You eat the dead cap space for a year or so, but you've got the foundation of your team that can be built and continue to be built on in these next two drafts. And if you don't have, $40-50 million in cap space being used on Tua when you're a hit away from him being out, I just think that's going to end up being the way to go. And it's sad. It's sad for Tua. It's sad for all the expectations. It's sad for Dolphin fans for all the expectations that we had, both coming into the season, for this season, and for the long term. The fact is this team's not going anywhere. And they're just not. They can't even adjust. And part of it is the coach. Obviously we beat that to death, that like part of it is the coach not changing what he's doing. But part of it, frankly, is the way the team is built. The team was built to not be good in the trenches because they have a quarterback and an offense that mitigates it. But then the quarterback isn't there to mitigate it. And it's like, well, you don't even have what you need to try to win a different way. Like, even if you wanted to just go out there and play straight ahead football and run the ball 50 times, the way Green Bay did against Indianapolis and Malik Willis's first start this year. The reason Green Bay could do that is because they invested in their offensive line. The Dolphins don't even have the ability to do that because at this point, they have a bad offensive line and bad quarterback play. So you could have whatever running backs you want. You could have whatever receivers you want. And it doesn't matter. Your offense is still going to suck because the two things that will determine how good your offense are is always going to be your offensive line and your quarterback.
That's it. So there we are. I don't know what else there is to say at this point, Brain. As Kevin Dern said on Twitter, and we love Kevin, he said, the light is just the oncoming train. The end result is inevitable, just a matter of time. And I think as you look at this team, if you're being honest, I've got people responding to our post on Twitter saying that you really expected this team to win with Huntley. He just was here a couple of weeks ago. Relax, blah, blah, blah. You're saying they're telling me that it's about Ross. He spends so much money and they're defending Ross. And it's no. You're bending yourself. You're twisting yourself into pretzels, trying to defend anything about this team and this organization. There is no foundation in place based on the players, based on the personnel, based on the front office. Is there a piece in there maybe somewhere that could prove to be a foundational piece? Yes. I'm sure there may be a handful of players on this team that could be part of the next generational Miami Dolphins team that competes. Sure. But until those changes from the top happen, it's never going to happen. And this team is doomed. And it shows you, as we have said, as we have stressed, that this build was faulty. And you had other people, you had other teams, listen, I don't want to crap on other podcasts because people, I don't want to crap on somebody for having rose-tinted glasses. But I think it's fair to say that there have been people with rose-tinted glasses who saw things a different way. And they saw it that way because of their rose-tinted glasses. And that's okay. We've said before that there are people that have gotten so lost in the nitty-gritty and the micro that they have failed to see things from the macro perspective. And when you pull out and you zoom out and you look at things from the macro, you can see the flaws and how clear they all are. And now as we sit here with a 1-3 team, The road ahead is long and the road ahead is rough. And it's hard to imagine the road ahead being terribly enjoyable for the Miami Dolphins and for those of us who watch. But what I do want to say is thank you to everybody who has watched the live stream today, to everybody who is supporting Dolphins Talk Extra, to everybody who is following along and who watches. We appreciate you. And listen, you're always going to get honest responses and reactions from us. Sometimes will we put on the aqua and orange glasses? Sure. But we're always going to give you honest assessments of what we see and what we think and what we believe. And this is going to be a long season. And it's going to be hard to get through. But we're going to be here every step of the way. And for those of you who are part of Dolphins Talk Extra, we appreciate you for being part of this, because we're going to be reacting and responding the whole way around. And yes, I will even say this. There are 13 games left in the season. And yes, if the Dolphins if they find a way to win 13 straight games, they finish the season 14-3 and they make the playoffs and they're the number 1 seed in the AFC. Yes, I understand. And I know that there are people out there who are going to jump to that and say that, and that are going to use that as the thing to call me crazy and to call us ridiculous and to tell us FOH. But I'm telling you, if you believe that, boy, I got a bridge to sell you. So anyway, thanks to everybody for supporting the show. Thanks to everybody for supporting the podcast. This section, and those of you who have been keenly watching will have noticed that at some point we switched from Dolphins Talk Extra to Same Old Dolphins, because I think I'm going to release this segment of the live stream as our podcast, as our Monday reaction podcast for everybody. We'll be back on Thursday. We'll have our regular show. We'll have our bonus segment for Dolphins Talk Extra. We will preview. We'll preview our upcoming game against the New England Patriots. I don't know why that's so funny to me, but we're going to preview the game. And look, man, we're going to be with you the rest of the way this season. We're going to be with you no matter what, because as horrible as it is, as painful as it is to watch, we love this stupid team. And we're going to cheer for this team, and we're going to podcast about the stupid team, and we're going to watch this stupid team, and it's going to be a freaking disaster. And that's okay, because I think at this point, you can just, at least I'll speak for myself. At this point, I've put all expectations out the window. This is not a team that I believe that is going to be competitive. This is not a team that is going to make a deep run. At this point, I am looking at this team from now until the end of the season to evaluate who are the players that are going to be part of the next version of this team. Who are the guys that are on this team that are going to be in the next iteration of this team when we take a step forward? And that step forward could come as soon as next year. But, I'll say this. I don't trust this head coach. I don't trust this general manager. And I don't trust this owner. I'll say I don't trust this head coach to lead it, to coach it, to be the day-to-day leader of the on-field operation. I don't trust this general manager to be the person in charge of having an overarching footballing vision for the franchise. And I don't trust this owner of being able to find that person to implement that overarching football vision. I realize that it's highly likely that this is going to be the same owner. And my gut feeling is, as it always has been, that until that owner is gone and we have somebody else who can implement and hire correctly and not be loyal to a fault, that is when you will have a competitive football team. Brain, any parting words for the people before we hang it up?
No, I think you basically said it all. It's going to be a long season. It's going to be difficult to get through. We'll see. I think at this point, like, we know that if Tua doesn't come back, we know what this team is. This team is probably not going to win a football game if Tua is not your quarterback. So the only question is, realistically, if Tua comes back, what does this team look like with Tua? And if they wanted to do that for evaluation purposes, there might be value in that. And then we could see. I mean, this team is not winning anything of any consequence this year. Even if Tua comes back as soon as he can, which is the report is that he is. I don't see it happening. I just think there's way too many question marks with this team, and they're going to have dug way too big of a hole. So the question is, what does the team look like? What's the ceiling of this team once Tua comes back? And then it's really evaluating the play, and it's really being real with yourselves. As like it's going to be up to Chris Greer and Stephen Ross, because Mike McDaniel is not going to just say like, oh yeah, trade everybody, because he's going to try to win games, right? But it's going to come down to Chris Greer and Stephen Ross to make the decision of whether or not they're going to be sellers at the trade deadline. I think they've got to be sellers. I think they need to be looking to make these trades now, because there are guys that we know are on this team that are not going to be on this team next season. And, they have big decisions to make with Javon Holland and with, even with Jalen Phillips. They have big decisions that need to be made. And, if they're really, if they don't have any design of bringing Javon Holland back and they're going to try to be cheap there, like, just trade the guy. Just make the move. Forget about trying to do what you need to do for this season. Every move that this team needs to make from this point needs to be with their eyes on next season and beyond. And it's sad that we're here so early, but that's where we're at.
It is what it is. There's nothing, I mean, at this point in time, based on what we have seen, trying to salvage the season is only going to hurt the long-term outlook for this team. You've been gifted a golden opportunity to move on from the quarterback that you gave a big contract to. You have the out. Take advantage of it. And, let's regroup. You've got an opportunity, because at that point, I just don't know how you look at the season, and I don't know how you look at this team and go, yeah, this is a team that's competitive. We have no idea what the status is of Jalen Phillips at this point, how bad his injury is, but it seems likely that injury seems bad. The fact that he was ruled out pretty quickly, that seems bad. So, like, I don't know. It's all bad. So that's it. We're going to call it a night right here. Thank you for listening. Thank you again for being subscribers to Dolphins Talk Extra. Although I should give a shout out to everybody who's listening after the fact, because this segment of the show is going to be available to everybody, because we're going to make it available on the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. Make sure you're following us at Amplified to Rock. I'm primarily on Blue Sky, but you can follow at Same Old Dolphins on Twitter. You can follow at Aaron the Brain on Twitter. Make sure you're visiting DolphinsTalk.com each and every day. Make sure you're visiting Caneswear.com. It's the spot where Miami fans shop. And you're a Miami fan, whether you like it or not. So thank you for being here with us. We hope you had a good time. We hope you enjoyed it. And listen, we'll be here the rest of the way. So if you're not a Dolphins Talk Extra subscriber, patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. We'll be here with you all season, and we'll be commiserating. So thank you. Take care of yourselves and each other. And as always, go Dolphins.
And in the words of our good friend Patrick Mullen, embrace the suck.